Hello everyone, welcome back. Today we are going to talk about a very common question in the Microsoft ecosystem. What is the difference between the Power Automate versus Azure Logic Apps? When you should use the Power Automate and when you should use the Azure Logic Apps? At first glance, these two tools look almost identical. They both automate workflows, they both connect to hundreds of the services, and they even use a very similar drag and drop designer. But the reality is that they are designed for different audience and different type of solutions. In this video, I am going to explain what is Power Automate, what is the Logic Apps, what is the key difference between them, real use cases of each, and when you should choose one over the other. Let's get started. Power Automate and Logic Apps are both workflow automation services from Microsoft. They allow you to automate processes and integrate the different systems together. For example, you can connect services like Outlook, SharePoint, Microsoft Teams, Dynamics 365, and many third-party platforms. Both services support the over 300 connectors and both provide a visual designer that allows you to create the workflow without writing much code. The goal of the both tool is very simple: automate repetitive tasks and integrate the system quickly so you can focus on work. Now let's look at each one separately. Power Automate is a part of Microsoft Power Platform. It is designed primarily for business users, analysts, citizen developers, and Microsoft 365 users. The idea behind the Power Automate is to make the automation easy and accessible. Users can create the workflow directly from a web browser, or even you can use the mobile app. You don't need deep development experience. Let's discuss about the use cases of the Power Automate. Imagine an employee submit a request for vacation. So Power Automate can detect the request submission, send an approval to the manager, wait for the approval or rejection, and finally it can notify the employee automatically. This type of workflow is very common example in the HR and operation. And another example, the SharePoint notification. Let's say a new document is uploaded to the SharePoint. Power Automate can automatically send an email notification, post a message in the Microsoft Teams, and update the tracking list. The another example, I can say the email automation. Let's say when you receive an email with an attachment, Power Automate can automatically detect and save the attachment to OneDrive. It can rename the file, and even it can notify to the team. These types of workflow are very ideal for the Power Automate because they help the employees automate the regular basis tasks. Now let's talk about the Azure Logic Apps. Azure Logic Apps is also the another workflow automation services. It is designed mainly for the developers, IT professionals, and cloud architect. It runs inside the Microsoft Azure, which means it's better suited for the enterprise integrations and the backend automation. Logic Apps support the advanced development tools like Visual Studio Code, DevOps pipelines, and enterprise monitoring. This makes it much more powerful for large-scale system integrations. Let's look at some real-world scenarios. Imagine a company needs to integrate the multiple systems such as SAP, Dynamics 365, Salesforce, Azure services, and external API. So, Logic Apps can orchestrate the workflow between all of this. Another example, an application sends data through an API. So, Logic Apps can receive the HTTP request, process and transform the data, send the data to the another system, and trigger the additional services. This is very common in the enterprise architecture. Let's talk about the another example. It's for the high volume workflow. Let's say if your system processes thousands of transactions per hour, so Logic Apps can automatically scale in Azure. It makes it suitable for the large enterprise workload. Now, let's talk about the what is the key difference between the two automation platform. A simple way to understand the difference is this. Power Automate mainly focus on the business automation. Logic App is focused on the enterprise integration. Here is some key difference. Power Automate is mainly used by the business users, citizen developers, while the Logic Apps is typically used by the developers and the IT professionals. Power Automate works primarily within the Microsoft 365 and the Power Platform, while the Logic Apps run inside the Azure. And the another difference, Power Automate usually use the per user licensing, while the Logic Apps uses Azure consumption based pricing. And although both tools use the visual designer, Logic Apps also support the development tools like Visual Studio and Visual Studio Code. One interesting thing to know is that Power Automate is actually built on top of the Azure Logic Apps, but it provides the simplified experience for business user. Okay, let's talk about when you should use the Power Automate. Use the Power Automate when you need any workflow automation for the business users, or if you are working within the Microsoft 365. The workflow is relatively simple. You need the approval, notification, or productivity automation. In that cases, you can use the Power Automate. Typically, the departments using the Power Automate including the HR, finance, operation, and marketing. Those departments mainly use the Power Automate. Okay, now I will discuss about when you should use the Azure Logic Apps. You can use the Azure Logic Apps when the developers are building the integration, you are working with the Azure services, or even if you need any workflow that is involved with the API and backend system, in that cases you can use the Azure Logic Apps. Azure Logic Apps is also commonly used for enterprise system integrations, backend automation, and the cloud-based workflow. Okay, now if you want to learn the Power Automate, Microsoft provides the excellent free training on Microsoft Learn. Those courses guide you the step-by-step building the flows, using connectors, and automating the business processes. They are especially used for the business users and the citizen developers who want to automate the tasks inside the Microsoft 365. I will include the Microsoft Learn link in the video description so you can explore those courses again. Microsoft Learn also offers the training for Azure Logic Apps. These courses are typically aimed for the developer, IT professionals, and solution architect. You will learn how to integrate APIs, connect Azure services, and design the scalable cloud workflows. Again, I will include the Azure Logic Apps training resources in the description below. Now I will discuss about the connector cost. It's another factor. Consider the connector cost, right? So when building the workflow, you need to think about the services you are connecting. Some connectors are standard and some others are premium connectors. In Power Automate, the premium connectors may require the additional licenses. In Azure Logic App, pricing works differently. Because Azure Logic Apps uses Azure pay-as-you-go pricing, where you pay based on how many actions your workflow performs. So you can use the Azure pricing calculator to estimate the cost of your workflow. Also remember that Logic Apps often connect all multiple services together. So you should consider the cost of those services as well. Another important factor is the security. Since the workflow can connect to many internal and external services, organizations often implement the governance policies. In Power Automate, administrator can create the data loss prevention policies, the control which connector can be used together. In Azure Logic Apps, organization can use the Azure policy to manage and secure the integrations. So whenever you build the automation, always think about the security and governance from the beginning. Okay, so let's summarize everything. Both Power Automate and Logic Apps are powerful automation tools. The biggest difference comes down to who is building the workflow and how complex the solution is. If you are automating the business steps for users inside the Microsoft 365, Power Automate is usually the best choice. But if you are building the enterprise integrations and backend automation in Azure, Logic Apps is better option in that cases. In many organizations, both tools are used together. Power Automate handles the user workflow while the Azure Logic Apps handles the system integrations. I hope this helped clarify the difference between the Power Automate and Azure Logic Apps. Don't forget to check the learning resources in the description if you want to explore those tools further. Thank you for watching. I will see you in the next video.